Stock watch, baby. Here we go.
Training camp is over at Ohio State. It is time to get into the Texas matchup. Game plan, install, all that stuff is over. Depth chart, we don't know what it is, but I bet Ohio State and the coaching staff has a pretty good idea, even if they don't want to share it with us. So we have to guess.
We have a pretty good idea.
Most of the starters we know, but we can prospect a little bit.
Yeah.
We can take some guesses, and we can invest on a Wednesday on the beat. You know what we do here. This isn't going to be a surprise to you. It's the last few names of the last stretch of training camp that caught our ear and have us opening up the checkbook. By the way, he's Birm. I'm
Hello.
Austin. This is The Beat.
Yes.
And where would you like to begin?
Little insider trading never stopped anybody from joining Congress, so it shouldn't stop me from doing it here.
You're running for Congress?
No, we probably noticed Jason Moore walking off the field on Tuesday with a boot on his ankle, full pads.
He also had that same boot on Monday.
So it makes you wonder if he's not going to really be ready for Texas. And if that's the case, then consider this a one-time buy or insider trading tip. But I think
a quick flip.
I think that has to open the door for someone like Tywone Malone to be in a position to back up Edric Houston against Texas. And if that's the case, then that means he's going to play. I don't know that anybody else is really ready to go at the 3-tech. There's been some discussion about Jarquez Carter, of course, and then, that's certainly one to pay attention to. We've talked a lot about him over the last few months, but
am I falling into the trap by just listening to Larry Johnson talk about him, Edric Houston talk about him?
No, because the depth of the defensive, this isn't a normal depth situation for Ohio State. Yes, there's guys there, but none of them have played. And so it is sort of level footing, I think, for a guy like Jarquez who's been here since January. Not the same for Maxwell Roy, even though on Monday, when we, was it Monday when we talked to, why did we talk to Larry?
Last Thursday.
All the days are running together.
Training camp is a grind for everyone.
Edric was talking about Max Roy and bringing up, and Max Roy only got here in June, so the fact that his name is even being mentioned is worth paying attention to. But I think for this specific game, if there's any sort of duration to the Jason Moore foot issue, then Tywone Malone becomes first and foremost to me as a guy to watch to say, hey, he might be more important in that Texas Week 1 matchup than we anticipated.
I feel like, as I said, am I going too far down a road that I don't tend to do? True freshman.
But you got to change your mind. You have to change.
No, I'm open to change. I think that's an important part of growth.
Well, you have to. You're paying these dudes. They need to play. So if there's a question, can this guy play?
Then try.
Then you got to try.
But that maybe is not the case for Texas. Like you probably want to be reasonably sure. And I stand by what I mentioned on a few previous Wednesdays, that the defensive line group as a whole and the defensive tackle depth specifically, I think has changed the perception more than any other group on this roster throughout the month of training camp. However, there's a part of me in the back of my brain that's saying, well, if 1 week it's Eric Mensah and the next week it's Tywone Malone and then the next week it's Jarquez Carter, is that a good thing or is it possibly not a sign that someone is taking hold of that job and absolutely doing it? I understand Larry Johnson wants to play 4, 5, 6 guys, get them game ready. He believes that they have enough bodies that can do that. They're just not experienced enough. And if I'm taking the broad view and looking at how is this team going to look different by the end of November compared to right now, so that's pretty good. If there are flashes of play from 4, 5 different defensive tackles and Jason Moore eventually, maybe he'll be healthy enough against Texas. I don't know the severity of that foot or ankle injury that had the boot on it. We're not going to probably have any clarity on that until after the Texas game, but it doesn't matter. So
your skeptic's brain is saying the Jarquez Carter's mentions are because other guys have not removed him from the consideration?
It's a jumble of thoughts. I feel like if one guy in particular was consistently being named and we could point to that and was like, oh, you talked about Eric Mensah last week and then he did it again and you brought him up again, it's like, well, that would have been great. That's just one example because it could have been Tywone Malone.
Well, the names have changed so repeatedly.
And so that can either be a good sign that by November there will be 6 defensive tackles that can play, or it can be a sign that as you're getting ready, and Larry Johnson did narrow his focus. He said he's not trying to right now take a big picture view. He wants them to be ready to play against Texas. Do they have guys that are that close outside of Edric Houston, Caden McDonald, and I think Will Smith? Mm-hmm. And I don't know the answer to that.
That's the big question. That's $1 million question.
So
who's going to be backing up Edric next week? That's the question.
Yeah. Probably it has to be Tom Malone.
So
your stock. It has to be.
I think he's the guy in the most likely position to take advantage of it. So I guess we'll see. But it could be any one of those other 3 techs, as you mentioned, Eric Mensah, Jarquez Carter. Someone is going to be given an opportunity to take a big piece of this pie. So that mystery backup 3 tech is my first stock, and that's an insider tip.
Okay. Yeah.
What about you, Mylan Graham?
Boy. Am I allowed to?
Will Kazmarek?
No, I'm not going to do it. Here's what I think. I feel like I'm guilty right now of looking to the next wave of corners, and I always try not to do that. Mm-hmm. I've talked about Aaron Scott. We've mentioned Bryce West in the nickel.
And you tried to bench Davison Igbinosun multiple times a year ago.
Only in training camp. I didn't do it after.
So is this your official apology?
I think I've said that Davison Igbinosun absolutely proved me wrong, and the season would have looked very different without his contributions, most specifically at Penn State. You know, the penalties, pass interference, it is what it is. I don't want to dismiss it. I think it's important. It's not a trade that anyone wants to make. Tim Walton has talked about what I learned on Tuesday: top of the route, top of the route, top of the route, top of the route, and that was emphasized more than I've ever heard. And that's the thing that they're working on with IGB, because as he said, his goal was to, when he came back, was to be a first-round draft pick. And he wasn't going to be that at the end of last year, but he was going to be, I don't know, a third-round pick, somewhere in the middle rounds. He was probably going to be selected before Denzel Burke. Anyway, I think, and I said this when he came back, that probably we were going to, or I was going to maybe jump to the next thing and overlook him. He's probably the most impactful returner of at least draft-eligible guys. Let's eliminate portal conversation from the matter here. But it's the combination of both. Like Davison Igbinosun and Jermaine Mathews, I think, is there a more experienced, proven group? Even though Jermaine hasn't started.
Confident.
Like that's got to be the swaggiest group of corners, and with a body of work to back it up in the country. Like that is such a huge deal for Ohio State.
I think what's crazy, because we've seen Davison, and he is the fire bug. He's the spark plug out there at the defense. And he mentioned on Tuesday at the media availability for the defensive backs that the biggest change for him is that he feels more calm now. And I'm like, yeah, I can see it. Like he's got a zen to him. And I don't know if that's just because there's a comparison directly to what you get out of Jermaine Mathews and his own style of fiery energy. But there's no shortage of confidence for Davison Igbinosun. And last year, if you're someone who thinks that he is going to back off of being brash and cocky and talkative on the field because he got called for a lot of penalties, like that does not appear to be the case.
That won't happen. Not at all. And I just think, you mentioned the confidence, and it's so critical to have that at corner specifically. When we talk about the value of quarterback, yes, that's obvious. Having great wide receivers is going to be critical for the offense, and you build a defense where you got to be strong up front, and the linebackers are going to lead this group. But there is something about Ohio State when they have early round corners who are going to tell you about it. Mm-hmm. Like this, it elevates the entire defense. It allows you to do so many more things with the pass rush, gives it that extra beat to get home. It allows you to be more creative with the way you're going to disguise some of the other stuff with your safeties. Like things that are way above my pay grade, the X's and O's wise. I know that Ohio State's defense is elevated to that lofty perch, number one in the country, when they have corners that are not just good, but that are going to tell you about it. And you go down the list, some of my favorites, you think about that 2019 defense and what made it so great. Yes, Chase Young is a generational prospect. Jordan Fuller was amazing. But when you had 3, early round corners, and one of them playing in the slot, and Damon Arnett and Jeff Okudah and Sean Wade all being willing to come tell you about it in different forms or fashion and demoralize their opponents, I don't know that I've loved anything more than that.
No, it sets the tone for the entire defense, and it changes the way offenses have to play against you. Like you said, the ball can't come out as fast. You can't do a lot of the things that are traditionally used to beat a talent-rich program like Ohio State, which is, schematic things that are designed to take advantage of one missed position. So it's certainly there. Davison is the leader.
Yes, all right. So that was both Davison and Jermaine for me, by the way.
Here's another inside tip.
Okay.
This is why I like this show and the opportunity for us to regularly speak to you, America. On Monday, we sat in here and talked about snap judgments, and we were referring to Ryan Day's rundown of which players are game ready at each position and who's number 3 here or 4. Ryan didn't get into specifics. He mentioned that there were 4 linebackers ready to play in his mind, and we posited that the 4th was likely Garrett Stover, and I've heard different sense.
Guess we were wrong.
I've heard different sense. That's not a knock on Garrett, who I was told is absolutely coming on strong and is putting them in a position where maybe by the end of September they'll feel like they have 5 game ready. But that 4th guy is Riley Pettijohn. And
that's wild.
I'm not surprised by it. He was the number 1 ranked linebacker prospect in the country a year ago, coming out of Plano, Texas. I'm not sure how much that means he's going to play in year 1. He's definitely going to be very important on special teams, but so will Garrett Stover. But the body of work, the physical nature of the way Riley plays is not being looked over. And just because he's a freshman, like, again, this is not I would expect him to play a lot against Texas type of conversation, but like, that dude is a real one, and is moved up in the conversations faster than any Ohio State linebacker since Raekwon McMillan, probably in 2014 as a true freshman. I'm trying to think if there's been any true freshman linebacker that's led to the conversations that are happening now about Riley Pettijohn.
Yeah, not like this.
And that's only Raekwon is someone I can remember. And he was starting by week 5 or 6 that year over Curtis Grant, but this is a different scenario. I wouldn't expect that here, but it's sure a reminder that James Laurinaitis is putting together a pretty darn good room.
Isn't it tricky to talk about that right now, because it's almost like there's the Texas game and it's separate from the rest of the season?
Yeah, well,
because those are the opportunities. Like, after that, I bet right now that Riley Pettijohn plays 30 snaps against Grambling.
Yeah, and he might play 3 against Texas, if that.
Special team
snaps.
Yeah.
So it's about, like, I think resetting expectations properly and compartmentalizing what that Texas game is compared to everything else. Feels like it's pretty important when we're talking about projections for players and playing time, because there's going to be a reaction if certain players don't. If Bo Jackson doesn't play much in week 1 against Texas, doesn't mean anything. If Riley,
he probably won't.
Right. If Riley Pettijohn doesn't play, it doesn't mean anything. It just means now the actual season starts. So again, as I said on Tuesday's episode or Monday's Snap Judgments, like, when you open the season with the Super Bowl, it's kind of different.
It is. Yeah, and there's no world where Riley Pettijohn would benefit from a red shirt, and he's not going to.
Yeah.
So you got to
be here for you.
You have to get him out there on the field, and I think that's pretty exciting.
Yeah.
I'm trying to decide if should I apply it to the Texas game or to the duration of the season. You know what? It doesn't matter, because I haven't talked about Mylan Graham in weeks, and I have to.
Oh.
I think that you and I have sort of, I feel like we're at loggerheads about the 4th wide receiver.
I think we believe different things about it. Yeah.
I think coming out of the second scrimmage that the Mylan Graham rocket ship is taking off again. And I'd said as recently as Monday, they're not going to play 4 wide receiver. Like, you have to, if you're trying to win the Super Bowl, then it's going to be Carnell, Brandon Ennis, Jeremiah Smith, and Max Clare that are touching the football in the passing attack. And you don't need to worry about 4 or 5 or 6. Mylan Graham is going to make that a real option. I still don't think that it's going to change the rotation, but the way, at least for the Texas game. But again, it's another one where if you're taking the long view, it's not even a matter of the light coming on. It just was in a situation, Mylan Graham, a year ago where he was surplus to requirement, and Ohio State wasn't going to gain anything. Mylan Graham wasn't going anywhere. He wasn't begging for playing time. He wasn't asking to renegotiate NIL deals.
Yeah.
He was okay with that whole process and when he showed up and what the development track was going to be like. And I don't mean that to be any slight whatsoever on Bryson Rodgers, who is another player, by the way, who I think is on the Arvell Reese plan of continuing to grow every time I see him. I don't know how that's possible, but it's also a reminder that
these kids are 19
and 20 years old, and they can continue to change and evolve and grow and stretch. There is a role for Bryson Rodgers on this team without question. But Mylan Graham, whether that is in the return game or simply being the fourth wide receiver and giving Carnell and Jeremiah a rest when they need it, or even operating on the slot, I think he can do everything. I hope I don't look back at this in like 3 years and be like, boy, you were guilty of something that you used to hate. Just driving a hype train before anyone was ready, before they had proven it, and it didn't transpire. I strongly believe that Mylan Graham will pay that off.
I agree at some juncture. I tend to fall more on the side of, in this season, Bryson Rodgers.
Who are you?
Bryson Rodgers provides something different than what Mylan is. Obviously pretty athletic. It's not like he's saying he's not, but the explosiveness that Bryson has and the opportunity to provide something different in the passing game than, Brian Hartline has done a remarkable job developing these guys. And one of his trademarks, one of the calling cards of his receivers is just the smooth, fluid in and out of breaks and maintaining full speed at breaks. And that might not be what Bryson Rodgers does best. But what he does best is get down the field, and he is really fast when it comes to straight line speed. And I think you need a guy like that with this offense. If you're going to take advantage of Julian Sayen's arm and the ability to hit all the routes, and Tim Walton was talking about it on Tuesday, that he can hit any throw on the route tree. One of those important throws for football is that 9 route, and that means you got to be able to get the ball down the field. And yes, Jeremiah Smith can do that.
Are you sure?
I've seen it. I'm not sure that is the specialty for Carnell Tate or Brandon Ennis. And so I think if you are looking for someone else to maybe occasionally come in and be that home run threat, I still think Bryson Rodgers is the guy. But Mylan Graham is going to be really, really good. I just don't know if these first 6 weeks are when you're going to see it.
I like how all those skills and descriptors that you use for a quintessential Brian Hartline receiver applied to Mylan Graham. It was beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, they all do. I'm just I'm just saying, one thing we've heard so much from Ohio State and its coaches in this offseason is game plan specific. Like, I think that there is a different role for those guys in the offense. So, which guy provides something different is, I think, will ultimately be a separator. So,
okay. You have a third stock?
Third stock for me would be who do you think?
Are you asking me to give you one?
Who do you think it is? No, I just really, really like what we saw to Lorenzo Styles on Tuesday, and I saw sometimes when we do the stock watch, maybe it feels a little.
If I was going to give you a third stock, I was going to say Lorenzo Styles. So I'm really disappointed.
It might be a touch of recency bias because
I should have just gone.
That's the person we just spoke with, but like. Yeah. There's a maturity in his personality that I think this team desperately needs. And now there's a confidence that he has that he belongs on the field. And that is being relayed to the other guys on the field. There's nobody who thinks that Lorenzo Styles is playing because his brother is the Block O. Like, Ohio State is not that type of program that's just going to put a guy out there because they like his family. Like, that's just not the way it works.
That's Iowa.
Right. And that's worked out really well for them. But that's not how Ohio State is. Lorenzo Styles has earned this opportunity. He humbled himself, came back to Ohio, changed positions. Like, he wants to be here, and he has earned two real good years of developing and turning into a defensive back. And, maybe we'll be completely wrong on this 4 weeks from now. Maybe Bryce West is taking a hold of that position and not let go because of his hyper athleticism. I don't know. But I know that Lorenzo Styles' role on this team, he's not a captain. But he is a captain. Like, he's one part of the 2-part Styles captains.
Yep. He's
really important for this team.
Yeah, I mentioned it on Snap Judgments on Tuesday, so if you haven't seen that, you can check back on 97.1 The Fan's YouTube channel or 10 TV's YouTube channel or 10 TV Plus. I talked pretty extensively about Lorenzo. I believe that he, the numbers are what they are. He gave up receptions. Other teams threw on him. That's not changing history. I think that, and if you want to hold that against him continually, or you are just skeptical about what that's going to look like,
understandable.
That's fine. I totally get that. It's not. I think he's going to surprise people. I think the stock is pointing up for him, and I think when he joked about like the preparation is completely different for him, where he was a third down specialist and working on special teams, and the parts of the game that he had to learn were very different and very specialized. And now they're saying, well, you're out. You need to know everything.
Yeah.
And I'm not using that as an excuse or a justification. It's like, oh, we could have just done more work and been ready for anything. Whatever, that's fine. He's also like, I graduated. This is all about football for him. And I think someone with his work ethic, he is clearly athletic. You don't make plays at wide receiver for Notre Dame and then become a contributor to a national championship defense at Ohio State by accident. Yeah. He has everything that you can need. And even when we compare it to Tanner McAllister, like that may be underselling what
Lorenzo athletically is ahead of where
he's better than that. So like, I think that if you want to be skeptical, if you want to see it against Texas, I definitely understand that. I'm not saying that a week and a half out you have to be completely sold that he's a finished product, but I'm betting that he's going to be reliable enough to give Ohio State exactly what it needs for that position, which again involves the flexibility to move the other pieces around him. He was the last one into that secondary, and clearly anyone who saw him go out there was going to take their chances against him. And the fact that he gave up some throws in that dime roll, that happens to everybody, by the way. That's how you become a dime defensive back in a college defense. But he didn't let them become, major throws over his head, touchdowns, consequential, costly plays for Ohio State. That's worth remembering because now it's a different level of coaching. It's a different level of responsibility. It's a different level of maturity. It's a different level of development. And I think, you can bet on that. I think it's a safe one too.
But it's also an opportunity because of the experience he had a year ago. He can play deep. He allows Caleb Downs to do other things. So I just think he's going to be a much bigger part of this defense, especially against Texas, than we've talked about all offseason. And I expect that he'll take that and grow from it because I think he's in for a big year.
Okay. We've not done any special team stocks.
Yeah, I mean, Nick McClarty, you have to think the conversation has changed, right? We've avoided talking about special teams they have
it's one of the most heated battles in camp.
There's a punter battle. There's probably still a kicker battle between
we don't know who's leading
Jackson Corville and Jaden Felding. So there's an opportunity. Everyone wanted Nick McClarty to be the punter a year ago, and Joe McGuire won it because he could get the ball off his foot, and you knew exactly that it was going to go 42 yards. And
it was going to go in the correct direction.
Right. And that was not always the case for McClarty. And apparently from conversations we've had with special teams folks around the building, like the light is on and the mechanical shifts have been shifted correctly. So
embraced.
It seems as though maybe this is the year that we get to see the guy who can maybe kick it 75, 80 yards.
You know what I think?
What?
Joe McGuire is going to be the punter against Texas.
Probably. I mean, he's consistent. That's what matters. Like one thing, that's like the theme we continue to hear.
And we heard that the hang time and the number is you joked.
I know. It's getting there.
Jersey number 42 is because that's exactly how far the ball's going to go. We heard that he might need to get a higher number,
which is great. And maybe a couple, maybe he's looking at 44 now. But
47 is taken.
The whole thing is what Ohio State has been preaching is that every position, you better be consistent. You cannot play at Ohio State on a down in, down out basis unless you're able to do what you need to do repeatedly and repeatedly. And so now you have McClarty developing, and it's great to see. Like, he could have left. There were people who would have paid him to come kick at their school.
Australian punters are always in demand.
Hot, matey. Arg. Pirates.
That's a pirate. That's
matey.
Yeah, you used to be so good at impressions and accents. Now
I got old. Everything's broke.
Yeah, but still plenty of time for you to fix it and get ready for the Texas game. Get fully healthy and get recharged.
Can't wait.
There is just one more media availability left in training camp, and then that's it until Ryan Day's Texas Week press conference. So we'll be back for a Woody Wednesday. We will have some snap judgments on the Austin Birm Show. Will Birm be on it? Who can say?
No.
It's up in the air. Everyone is day-to-day in this life. But thanks for spending part of this one with us to kick it off with some stocks on a Wednesday edition of The Beat. He's Birm. I'm Austin. We'll see you later after we hear from the Ohio State tight ends and Keenan Bailey. See you there.